There is big news out of Russia about an initiative that they're working on with regards to gold, and this is a big deal. Let's talk about it as we explore. Even with the changing geopolitical climate with the unexpected election of Donald Trump, Russia is still working on a digital gold system for international settlements, according to a piece here from Sergio Goshenko. This is big news, folks. The program, currently in its pilot stages, is part of a test to examine the feasibility of using gold assets for finalizing international exchanges involving Russia. Capital Lab partner Evgeny Shatov stated that the digital gold assets can help the nation bypass sanctions and reduce its dependence on the dollar. So de-dollarization is something that is still a threat, even with threats that came from the president-elect at the time. Now, for those of us, we know that gold is indeed the ultimate safe haven, and it transcends politics. And I think, in a sense, this is a good thing for any nation to do. I think to tie itself to gold, because gold certainly is the ultimate store of value. And indirectly, they already are. And I'll explain that in a moment here. But first, let me again recommend you Summit Metals. Summit Metals is the sponsor of the channel, and they have some great deals, good prices. I'm hearing from more and more folks that have been using them and have been pleased with their purchases that they have made through summitmetals.com. Now, this is something that is quite appealing, I think, for most of us that are into gold and understand its history. You know, why do central banks or why do nations, in a sense, indirectly back their entire systems on gold? Because they store it. And it's only those nations who have sold half of their gold, such as the Brown's Bottom that occurred in the United Kingdom back around 2002, or Canada, who in about 2016 sold all of their gold reserves. Otherwise, most other nations, they're accumulating more. And especially since 2022, they've been accumulating at a record pace, and it's continuing on, as I reported on recently on this channel. So what does this mean? This means essentially that nations, they are backing their entire reputation on gold in terms of being a way to be able to protect against economic uncertainty around the world. And de-dollarization is one way that they're doing that, especially after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And that war is still continuing. In fact, as I record this video, Donald Trump has posted a latest threat, which includes sanctions and includes tariffs against Russia. You know, weaponization of the dollar will continue. So this news is quite apropos here coming today. Gold, one of the most sought-after hard assets, may once again become part of the global payment system. According to local reports, Russia will be piloting the use of digital gold assets for international settlements as a way to reduce its dependence on foreign currency and payment systems. And we know what's happening to all currencies around the world, including the ruble, is they are losing value because we live in a fiat system nowadays. But they're backing their gold indirectly because they hold it and they have it as part of their reserves. And Russia is by no means any different than any other country, and this is why they're doing this. And they're continuing to hold gold in their portfolio, or in their vault, rather. These digital gold assets are blockchain-based tokens whose value is pegged to the price of gold in international markets and backed by real gold stored in real vaults. In fact, we have seen images of the gold in Russian central bank, and even there's famous image, or several famous images of Vladimir Putin himself holding these gold bars. The pilot project, which is intended solely for testing purposes right now, includes the purchase of digital gold assets for rubles and a subsequent repayment scheduled for May of 2025. According to Capital Lab partner Evgeny Shatov, this would be the first time these assets are used to settle international payments, opening the door for further experimentation, which provides another sort of thumbing the nose to what Donald Trump has threatened earlier, but not directly. The allure of using gold as a payment tool, as a hard asset, should provide a volatility buffer for the parties involved in the transactions. Nonetheless, Shatov recognized that there are still cons linked to this method. The prospects for the development of international settlements using gold digital financial instruments looks promising, but are associated with a number of risks and challenges, he detailed. Gold settlements might also be a part of the upcoming BRICS payment system that Brazil has committed to develop during the period of its presidency at the bloc. Economists like Jim Rickards have remarked on the role of gold as a commodity currency for BRICS currencies. Digital gold would serve the same purpose, but the need for ordering constant international deliveries of the precious metal. Of course, to that end, that provides, again, a thumbing up of what Donald Trump has tweeted about when he was president-elect. Let me pivot and shift a moment here to a piece here over at AEI.org about this situation, about Trump's tweet on the BRICS as a threat to the dollar's global dominance. The idea that the BRICS countries are trying to move away from the dollar while we stand by and watch is over, he tweets. We require a commitment from these countries that they will neither create a new BRICS currency nor back any other currency to replace the mighty U.S. dollar, or they will face 100% tariffs. That's right. That's the threat to these nations if they use anything other than the dollar. And should expect to say goodbye to selling into the wonderful U.S. economy. They can go find another sucker. Well, they might find each other, and that's what they want to do. Anyways, the tweet ends with, there is no chance that the BRICS will replace the U.S. dollar in international trade, and any country that tries should wave goodbye to America. Well, that's what they want to do, essentially. They already have been moving into that end. They can't really right now because the dollar is still so dominant. Many of Trump's pronouncements, like his recent threat of 25% tariff hikes against Mexico and Canada, and 10% against China, are designed to cow his perceived adversaries and gain the upper hand in negotiations. But his threat against the BRICS countries is decidedly crazier because left to themselves, the BRICS were never going to replace the dollar with a new currency of their own making. Moreover, unlikely as an abandonment of the dollar would be the capricious and indiscriminate and unilateral wielding of U.S. power combined with self-destructive policies on the home front could indeed make that happen. So the U.S. dollar is the world's preeminent currency. For the talk about the dollar's demise, its share on global reserves is nearly 60%. I believe that number is 58%, actually. Much higher than the next closest contender, the euro, at about 20%, while the Chinese renminbi is less than 3%. The dollar share in international lending and in trade invoicing is similarly elevated, while almost 9 out of every 10 foreign exchange transactions involve the dollar. The reason is not mysterious. The U.S. economy is huge, innovative, and fast-growing. Our financial markets are the deepest, most liquid, and open in the world. The rule of law is strong, with investor protections that apply to residents and foreigners alike. And U.S. Treasury securities are considered among the safest in the world. So who are the BRICS, and why don't they like the dollar? Well, we know that they're an informal group of 9 countries, but they do meet officially every year, I believe. And they were originally Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and then adding South Africa, and more recently, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE, seeking to build an alternative to what they see as Western dominance of international institutions. The BRICS antipathy towards the dollar stems from its part of the view that the U.S. monetary policy experts have undue influence on financial institutions around the world. But the most salient motive, especially for Russia, China, and Iran, is that dependence on the dollar renders them vulnerable to financial sanctions imposed by the U.S. and its allies. And so that's the background of what's going on there. Now, as we get back to what's going on with Russia right now, gold, and seeing it's been on the mainstream due to its strong price performance and the increase in deliveries to the U.S., as investors are trying to cover for a possible total tariff scenario. And so, in a way, in a sense, that's why many of these nations are continuing to accumulate gold. And I think that the higher gold's price goes in U.S. dollars, I think the more leverage, in a sense, some of these countries have that utilize it for transactions, especially if they peg their own currencies to them, or have a system that can be utilized internationally that could set up, in a sense, like Fed now is essentially the backbone to central bank digital currency here in the United States, which will not happen under the Trump presidency, according to his promise. But still, something like this that is being developed in Russia could be the backbone to setting up at a given time when there's less threats to a system that essentially will indeed compete with the dollar, a global or a BRICS system that could come down the pike, so that they can be able to do things and transact without such dominance on the SWIFT system and the dollar in general. They have already want to set up their own situation. But this is big news because it does involve gold, and this is the second time that this has been mentioned in outlets, and I've talked about it before, but we'll see how this plays out. If you enjoy the latest news on the world of precious metals, I hope you will consider subscribing to this channel and pressing the notification bell so that you can be apprised of the latest news as it makes its way across your device. And with that being said, I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time to watch, and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.